Well, Dan, it was November 30th, 2023, not even a year. Wow. Has it felt like a year plus? How's the commissioner of the WHL adjusting?
Tell you what, some days it feels like it's been about 30 days and other days like 30 years. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to figure out. But wow, what a league, what a great group of people. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and man, a lot of exciting things happening with the league. Lots to get to. We appreciate you taking some time from Father David Bauer down at the league's office to join us on Barn Burner today. I want to get to the news of what feels like the month or the week. The developmental pathways in hockey are very well established, and there's major, junior, and there's college, and there's all kinds of other leagues players can come up through. But it seems like we're about to see a seismic shift in the way that players can develop and the routes that they can take. Braxton Whitehead, a player for the Regina Pats, is committed to ASU for the 2025 season. And you've got Lucas Sawchuk, who is going to move from the USHL to the Oil Kings, but wants to remain committed to Denver University. How many phone calls have you got over the last month? And how big of a change is this for the developmental pathways for the NHL?
Well, it's a great question, and it's certainly an exciting time. It's a time of uncertainty, but I think it's a time of optimism when you think about the development path that's available for players these days. And I think that I should be clear that nothing has changed actually right now. Everything that you've talked about, everything that you're seeing is rooted in speculation and anticipation of what different people in different ends of the hockey industry think are going to happen. Here at the Western Hockey League, I think what's important for us is that we cement ourselves as the best possible place for a Western Canadian or someone in the Western part of the United States to develop between 16 and 20 years old. And so you talk about Whitehead, who has played a great career with the Regina Pats from Alaska, is graduating, probably isn't prepared to play pro or move on to the professional level, and has an aspiration to go play in the NCAA. Well, I got great news for you, Braxton. You have earned, by virtue of completing your tenure here in the WHL, a scholarship that can be used at any institution in Canada and the US. And by the way, you've now got an opportunity potentially to go play hockey there, contingent on the eligibility rules changing. I see this as a good thing for athletes. And I think if you look at it and say, well, at 16 or at 15 or even at 14, we're currently asking athletes to make a really tough decision based on this ecosystem. I think that the potential evolution or the potential change that would allow every kid in that age group who's of the top caliber, who wants to potentially pursue the dream of playing in the National Hockey League or at the U Sports level, or potentially in the future at the NCAA level, come on up to the Western Hockey League, because boy, we do it right for the players. We create an incredible environment. We create an incredible education ecosystem, and that's really important to us. It really is about the players.
So, it's fascinating. You noted this is all speculation, but I mean, we're seeing things we've never seen in terms of players that have accrued games committing to U.S. programs. And the sense is that people believe that, likely the representatives of these players believe, there's strong enough legal ground where if they have to go to court to fight for their right to play NCAA hockey after playing in the CHL, they believe they'll win. I think it's a huge win for players. I agree with you. Does the Western League or the NCAA have a feel like, yes, we want this, no, we want this, we don't want this? Or is it more just like, these are players' rights and the representatives are going to pursue what they want?
It's a fair question. I don't know that it matters what we want, right? If you think about the changing landscape of the post-secondary thing in the United States, whether it's name, image, likeness rules that have come up, the transfer portal. And I don't think if you were to go down to the US and ask a bunch of schools, was the transfer portal an ultra strategic move? No, it was an outcome of legal proceedings at the end of the day. And so it's changed the landscape. Everyone is an unrestricted free agent every year in U.S. college sports. And you can imagine how that impacts commitments and how coaches think their lineup is going to look. And, we're blessed to have a degree of stability up here. We're blessed that the top players from all of the regions want to play in our league. We're blessed that we've got fantastic coaches, fantastic infrastructure, and that we're the primary development model for the National Hockey League for Western Canada and the US. And so that's the spirit of how we're looking at this. We're going to keep doing our job, hopefully attracting great kids and creating a great experience, whether they go on to play pro hockey or whether they want to go to university in any country in the world and become a dad, a husband, a citizen in the community. Like, our responsibility is developing young men, and we take that seriously.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's a good point that it's not just about the percentage of players that move on to make millions. Those are the ones that the education plan means the least for. They're going to be millionaires in the NHL is the ones we're talking about. So is there a concern now that you might have fewer years from these star players on their way to the NHL? Like, do you believe that your league now has to compete with an NCAA program for the rights to a 18-year-old who might not be NHL ready, or a 19-year-old where traditionally, if drafted out of the CHL, they can't go to the American League? I mean, all of a sudden there's a lot of, I guess, boundaries that have been firmly established that now there's question marks around.
It's fair. I think that we view our job as to create an environment that it's the best place where you would want a developing player, or you as a developing player would want to be through the tenure. So 16 to 20 or 16 through 19 at minimum, right? We have speculated on all the different risks and all the different possibilities. I don't know the exact statistic, but as you probably know, I think the average starting age of an NCAA player is over 20. Like, I had heard 20.7 or something like that, whether that's accurate or not. But it doesn't overlap with us at all. That we're at different stages of the development chain. Is there a small population of players that would see the need to leave our league at an earlier date to go there? I don't think that would be the best trajectory for an athlete, given they have an opportunity to develop in our environment through 19 or 20 and then move on to a university career on either side of the border. But, we'll be challenged with that, and, and we'll have to address it as it comes. I have to also imagine that there'll be some American kids that are curious about coming up here, who maybe have made college commitments, and their coach is saying, the best place for you to be is in the Western Hockey League. And I think that would be unusual for us, right? That doesn't exist in today's ecosystem. And we're trying to speculate, imagine, be creative, and frankly, collaborate. Because the thing that's happening, as you can imagine right now, is everybody wondering what's going to happen. Is it going to hurt us? What are the bad things that can happen? But I think if you have conversation, you understand where the tension points are for the different folks across the hockey ecosystem, you can have constructive conversations that hopefully lead to, hey, what's best for the player at this part of his journey, and try and figure out what might or might not happen. But it's a little bit futile until some sort of eligibility rules change and there are actual decisions to be made.
Totally. Yeah. And it is totally speculative, but it's also just so fascinating. I mean, it's the rule of unintended consequences. We set something up, we think this is going to work this, and it's like, oh shoot, I never thought about this happening. What about that? So everyone's trying to forecast what's the unexpected thing that's going to happen. I do love the idea that what's best for the player can be done, whether that's changing paths, staying with a program they really like. One of the rules that's irked me the most in my time covering junior hockey in the pro ranks is that when you have a player that isn't ready for the NHL, but has proven to be dominant in major junior, they're ineligible to play in the American Hockey League at 19 years of age. I don't know how that would last if this changes. It seems, do you see that rule staying? I'm asking you to speculate. I know that's not fun, but that's one of the first things I think about, because I do believe your league is phenomenal at developing players. I also do wish you could send a 19-year-old who's a 1.5 per game in the Western League to the American League as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, I think our position on it would be that for a kid that is not ready to play in the National Hockey League, we create a pretty darn good development environment, and we're very proud of that. We would tell any NHL GM that we accept the responsibility of how they would need to develop that this year. So you and I might see it a little bit differently as far as where that player is going to best develop. But we're, of course, it's an important part of our league to have some of these more mature leaders and players and skilled players in our league. And, and when you come to our league, you generally make that commitment to see it through, unless you're going to go on and play in the National Hockey League. And so, fair to say that we would hope that it continues on that framework, but we'll be prepared for all of the things that could change in the hockey landscape as we move forward.
Yeah, fair enough. Really interesting stuff. I appreciate your thoughts on that. I know it's, in your position, speculating is probably not the most comfortable thing to do. So thank you for that. Let's talk about some league notes. You guys are due to host the Memorial Cup, not this year where it's in the Quebec League, but next year. It's been since 2018, if I'm correct, pre-COVID. What's that process like for finding the cities, the right fit for a Memorial Cup that I imagine people have been clamoring for pretty strongly, given how long it's been?
So no, we had it in Kamloops in 23, I guess it would have been, because this year was 24 was in Saginaw. So yeah, we did have it in Kamloops. And by the way, this is a big event to host. When you think about the national implications of it, we talk about it being the hardest trophy to win in sports. You do all these studies and you try and figure out, what does it mean for a community to host it? The numbers said that it was $16 million of economic impact to Kamloops, $20 million of economic impact to British Columbia, $23 million of economic impact to Canada as a whole. And so this is not an insignificant event when you think about major sporting events that would come through Canada. And we've got 5 communities, 4 of them in Canada, 1 in the US, who are bidding on this. So if you go kind of west to east, and I think I'll get this right, or maybe I'll mix up the Alberta ones as I'm still getting acclimated here. But we've got Kelowna bidding on the event. We've got Spokane. We have Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and Brandon. And so we've got a pretty good sampling from across the league of different types of communities, bigger, smaller, Canada, US. Only Saskatchewan is not represented, which, is almost surprising when you think about it. But I think the idea of having 5 communities vying to have this event speaks to the magnitude of what it is, speaks to the health and the bounce back of the Western Hockey League coming out of COVID, where you can imagine how tough it was to operate a hockey league in the midst of a global pandemic. And so it's a very exciting event. The bids are due later this month. There'll be a site selection committee that works on this. And I think by the end of November is roughly the timeline when we'll announce where the Memorial Cup will be hosted in a Western Hockey League community in 2026.
And how did I forget Kelowna? Like Patrick Waugh's club won. I must have been celebrating with Patty or something. Okay. You've had some incredibly high profile players. I mean, Connor Bedard, what an incredible rookie campaign for him with the Chicago Blackhawks. Everyone's excited and waiting to see McKenna in Medicine Hat become the next great WHL superstar in the NHL. You've got Landon DuPont making his 15-year-old exceptional status debut. What is it like in the league when you've got the stars? I know you haven't been there for 10, 12, 15 years, but you're working with people that must be telling you, Dan, you're here at the right time, man. Things are going well here for star players.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I was at the NHL draft in Las Vegas, and we rang out 4 of the top 10 picks for the National Hockey League coming out of the dub. And, maybe I am taking it for granted. But I think we've always and always do have a pretty high caliber of player, a pretty high profile of player. The guys you listed, and there's many, many more, of course. But I think that part of what I want to do and part of the mindset I think needs to be, we got to do a better job at content, distributing our product, letting people see these special players in action. I think we're such a locally driven league at times. People are honed in on what's happening with their own team, and they're diehard fans. And the NHL has had this same kind of challenge over the years. And when the Crosby and Ovechkin era came along, that kind of opened things up. I think this is our Crosby and Ovechkin era in an interesting way. And what I mean by that is when you're not watching McKenna play, you're not watching Tija Ginla play, and you're not watching Landon DuPont play, then you're watching this other group of players. And across the league, we've got a lot of star power right now. We've got a lot of personality, and we've got to show that, and we've got to take credit for the fact that, holy smokes, like you imagine Bedard being in our league, a year and a half ago, and he's making a meaningful impact in the National Hockey League right now. Well, we got a handful of guys that are prepared to do that. Stankhoven's another guy that a lot of people are like, coming out of the Texas Stars or wherever he was playing in the American League.
Mm-hmm.
He came from the Kamloops Blazers, born and bred, played 4 or 5 years in our league. And that's where he developed to prepare himself to be ready to play in Dallas. And so that's a big thing for us. And we're very, very proud of the players. And we want to put them on a bigger pedestal than we ever have.
My kids are going first year U11, and they'll be very excited to see the Medicine Hat Tigers come to town. You got McKenna, you've got Lindstrom, the high pick that went to the Blue Jackets, the Flames draft Basha, Rene Corbet's sons on the team. I know there's always those little pockets of intrigue. So I know personally, I've already got the schedule out for when the Tigers pass through the Saddle Dome here in Calgary. So it's exciting times indeed. Certainly in these two markets that I just noted. How's it going in Wenatchee? Wenatchee first year in the Western League last year number 2 coming up. They were a few years in the BC League and then assumed that franchise that was in Winnipeg. How's it been?
Yeah, one of the things we celebrated, we were doing some kind of seasonal planning and getting the different groups together, is we celebrated that we survived the first year in Wenatchee because this happened in like a 60-day period. Yeah. And it all sounds easy, but our schedules are done months before that. Our uniforms are ordered months before that. You've got billet families and players that you've got to reaccommodate. You think about education, and these are high school students that have to fit into the community. And I got to give Wenatchee a ton of credit. Bliss Littler, David White, the owner, they made the necessary investments. They put the work in. They got the community involved. They had a really good first campaign. They were in a really interesting point in time in their cycle, right, where they were pretty stacked, and they had to decide if they were going to make a run or bet on the future. And I think that they made some thoughtful moves around roster management. They moved, a couple of players toward the end of the season to put themselves in a position where they can win some games and they can rebuild the team in a little bit quicker order. And so we're excited about that market. We're thrilled with the U.S. division. It creates a ton of excitement. There's a ton of rivalry, and it's become a great place for our players to live and spend their high school careers too. The kids that play down there love it.
Top 10 teams in the CHL for the preseason, or I guess before the regular season got going, were announced. Medicine Hat, number 1 in the country. Prince George returning some very talented players at number 7, and the Rockets and some kid named Aginla that must be related to some guy we know here in Calgary are ranked number 10. That's a pretty good start to the year. What are you excited for this season personally? I know there's a lot of uncertainty that we alluded to off the top, but what gets you excited about the 24-25 campaign in the Western League?
Well, we talked a lot about the players, and I think it's rooted there. Some of these storylines and the excitement that goes behind these guys is incredible. Number 2 is probably the rivalries. And this is a heated game, a game with a ton of intensity. As I've gotten greater proximity to the league and I've learned the caliber of people that are in the locker rooms, it gets me jacked up. And I think about kind of the families that build over the course of the season. And, the fans see them as a team. I see them more as a family. And these guys really do band together from day one. I see how rookies are brought in training camp. I see the role that they play. I think about the long bus rides and the tough travel that they'll sometimes have to do. And that gets me pretty excited. And so, I think that we're getting undershot there, having 3 out of the top 10, but I get having some balance and equity. We're going to have a lot of competitive teams this year. And I'm excited to see what happens on the ice, because at the moment, everybody's 0-0, right? Everybody's got a chance, and that enthusiasm resonates through fans, through general managers and coaches, and through the staff in the office. But it won't be long before we see who emerges as the top talent.
Dan, want to ask you about a new series. We all loved the Russians coming and playing in the Q, the O, and the Western League. Obviously, politically, things have changed, and I'm really excited about what you guys in the CHL are doing this year, as you're going to see some of the top American talent outside the league suiting up against the leagues. Tell us about it.
Well, as you know, we've hosted the Prospects game, usually in January each year, which featured the top draft-eligible class from the Canadian Hockey League in a showcase game, kind of an all-star event. It's one that's attended by all the NHL scouts. There's on-ice, off-ice. It's been a great event for a number of years. But I think one of the things that we thought would be really, really interesting is creating a little bit of more jam, tension, friction in an environment like this to see these guys play. And so we had the opportunity to get together with USA Hockey and say, hey, you want to play? And so we've got a 2-game series scheduled in November. that'll be hosted in the Ontario region this year between the Canadian Hockey League All-Stars who are draft eligible versus the U.S. National Training Development Program team that plays together throughout the year. And so it's a little bit of a change of format, but it'll be played in London and Oshawa this year. It'll be an annual event that we do with these guys. And I think it's going to bring a lot of interest and attention as you think about kind of the rivalry anytime you see the red, white, and blue playing against Canada and the Maple Leaf. And so I know our players are pretty excited about it. I know the scouts are excited to see these guys play in an environment like that. And it should be an event that brings a lot of attention to the sport, to the league.
Yeah, more best on best, please, at every level. That's great. And I love the dynamic. One group of guys train together all year, the others, you got to get together quick, get familiar. We got to be at our best real soon here.
Yeah, I think it's a little risky for both sides, right? Because these guys don't play each other throughout the course of the year. The National Training Development Program plays against kind of in the USHL league, and the idea of facing off against these guys that you don't see over the course of the year, no one really knows how we're going to do. But I tell you what, we want to win. That's important to us. And but we think the idea of showing up and playing in that competitive landscape, competitive environment will be good for the guys.
And it hasn't even been a year yet. Congrats to a near year on the job, Dan. And keep drinking from the fire hose. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We do appreciate it a ton. And we all will wait with bated breath to see what the hockey landscape turns into over the next few months and years. Thanks for your time today.
You got it.